Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 28th of April 2021. And what a day it has been. We are at all-time highs again on the ETH price here, which is really cool, up above 2,700. My tweets are still apparently calling top signals. All I tweeted out this morning was, "Good morning, Ethereans," and I, honest to God, hadn't even checked the price yet. I was just kind of like feeling bullish, feeling good because the positive price action the night before, and I had checked some of the Daily Gwei stats and metrics. So I was just on my phone. I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool. It's been growing a lot lately, and that's kind of like what I was happy about. And then I kind of looked at the price, and I'm like, oh no, the price went up a fair bit overnight, and then I saw it going down as I tweeted. I'm like, oh no. So yeah, I vowed not to tweet anything when ETH is in price discovery now. Just let ETH be. But on that note, a really bullish report came out, I guess like shortly after I did the refuel last night for me at least, called Ethereum the Triple Halving from Squishia. So this is an anonymous account on Twitter. I only noticed them recently on Twitter, but they've just come out of nowhere and published this 79-page long report about Ethereum and why they believe ETH is going to go to 150k within 18 months, or at least that's the price target they have here. So the report is linked here. Here it is, and there's also a one-pager. So obviously, I'm not going to read the entire report on the refuel or anything like that. But I have been going through it and getting through it. It is quite dense, but it is very bullish. I mean, the other day I gave my price target of $100,000 for ETH based on various means, and I gave my thesis for that. A lot of this definitely falls into that for sure. And definitely kind of like takes a lot from, I guess, the work that's been done from the guys at Bankless, right? All the work that was done prior to that as well. All the stuff that Justin Drake's been talking about. I mean, there's plenty in here, so I won't read through that. But the one pager basically gives you the TLDR of like what the catalysts are. And essentially like the main catalysts are EIP 1559 and the merge, the same things I kind of spoke about. But the report goes into much more detail and kind of like does a really great job of painting this picture and just making you really bullish. So yeah, this is just super awesome to see. Like I'm writing my own kind of bullish case for Ethereum as well, and for ETH too, like a very long form piece. But it's going to take a while for me to get it to where I want it to be and everything like that. It's not going to be an overnight thing, and it's definitely going to be focused on the Ethereum network probably more than the asset itself. Whereas this report is focused on the asset a lot. Basically, like most of it is focused on the asset, but also about how the network kind of feeds into that and kind of adds value to the asset as well. So yeah, I highly recommend that you go and read this report for sure. I mean, I don't think I have to recommend a bullish ETH report to you guys enough for you to go read it. But if you haven't got the time to read the whole 79-page report, you can just read the one pager here. So yeah, and I guess like a big thank you to Squish for putting this out here. Absolutely amazing work. I think this is going to gather the attention of a lot of these kind of, I guess, institutional investors, right? Because we've been seeing more of those dig into BTC, and I've been speaking about for a while now how I think the leap from BTC to ETH is going to be like basically very short. Once you're in crypto, you don't really go out of it, and once you're in kind of like once you first get into BTC, the other ones just are much easier to digest. So I think we're going to see plenty of institutional allocation come to ETH over the coming months. And a big reason definitely is EIP 1559 and the merge. And on that note, actually, maybe I should talk about this now. Hasu had he's on Uncommon Core podcast. He had on Crypto Kobe or Crypto Cobain today with Suzu. And they basically gave the bull case for Ethereum and its upcoming catalyst. Now, I listened to this and I came at this from a view of, okay, these people are traditionally kind of Bitcoiners. Like, Su has been a bullish on ETH for quite a while. Hasu spends a lot of time in it. And I think Kobe, over the last few months at least, has warmed up a lot to it and seems to be like a mega ETH bull now. But all three of these people came from a Bitcoiner background, like a pretty heavy Bitcoiner background. So listening to them speak about Ethereum and ETH in the same way that myself and a lot of other kind of Ethereans have been speaking about it since 2018 at least, was absolutely insane to hear. I honestly couldn't believe that I was listening to these kind of same people talking like this. And they were talking not just about kind of ETH as an asset, the bull case for ETH as an asset because of 1559 and the merge, but they were also talking about whether ETH can flip in BTC. And the consensus really was that it can. And it just, I was like, what? This is crazy. Like, am I actually hearing this right now? Because if you had told me that people like this who had the Bitcoiner background, right, and were obviously more bullish on Bitcoin, if you had told me these people would be talking about the flippening and saying that it could happen, I would have not believed you at all. Like, this is how insane this kind of notion is. But on that note, I highly recommend going and listening to this podcast. There's a lot of good nuggets of information in there. Even if there is a bit of overlap between what you've probably heard from myself and the bankless people and things like that, it's definitely, I think, going to reach different audiences than I can reach and the bankless guys can reach as well, which I think is very important because at the end of the day, I guess like social media works in echo chambers and bubbles and kind of like algorithms. Whereas, it doesn't matter how much I talk about Ethereum and the bull case for ETH, people are just not going to see it or not going to listen to me because of who I am. But when Bitcoiners maybe start talking about it, right, and when people that other people respect start talking about it and give this case, that just brings more and more new people into the ecosystem. So yeah, a bunch of like super, super bullish news for ETH over the last 24 hours here. And on that note as well, we had this announcement from the European Investment Bank here, the EIB, which is one of the top banks in the world from my understanding. They announced that they're going to be issuing a 100 million euro 2-year digital bond on Ethereum. So again, this is just Ethereum, marching on, becoming this global settlement layer for all types of value that I've spoken about before. We had Visa like a few kind of like months ago, maybe a month ago or something like that now, not too long ago, that was talking about this. And was kind of like supporting Ethereum as like a settlement layer. There's plenty of other institutions and companies settling on Ethereum, right? You could think about, centralized exchanges are settling on Ethereum all the time, right? They're processing all these transactions. I mean, DeFi is all settled on Ethereum, and we're just going to get more and more of this coming in. So this is huge. I mean, DeFi and Ethereum exist to disrupt the centralized traditional systems, but at the end of the day, I think that's going to happen over the long term. But in maybe the short to medium term, there's going to be like an amalgamation of stuff where you see these kind of like, I guess, existing institutions come into Ethereum and adopt it. Because I think what the internet showed a lot of different industries is that if you don't innovate when a new kind of like thing comes along, and if you don't join and kind of like try to be a part of it, you're going to get destroyed, right? And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these kind of, I guess, big institutions already take the leap into using these things, even though it's still quite young and still quite early within the crypto ecosystem. So yeah, and just another bullish point there. And I think just another one here from Eugene, who's the Asia head of BD at Gemini. He posted this excerpt from one of JP Morgan's, I guess, like one of their strategy pieces, where they basically talk about why ETH is outperforming BTC. And again, this goes back to me saying that once these institutions make the leap to BTC, the road to ETH is very, very short, and they're already there. I actually believe there are some big public companies already probably buying ETH. I do believe there are institutions already buying ETH in a big way. They just haven't announced it yet. The price action would lead me to believe that too. I mean, it takes a lot to move the ETH markets these days because ETH is such a big asset, and it's exhibiting very similar behaviors to what BTC did when BTC had all those announcements about public companies, and it had its major run up to whatever it was, 50, 60K or something. From like 10K. I do think ETH is exhibiting the same behaviors, and it's playing out in a very similar way here. So very, very bullish all around for ETH. And, I think the price is reflecting that, right? It's not like we're saying, oh, this is really bullish and the price is like going down or doing nothing. That did happen during the bear market, funnily enough, where there was tons of bullish kind of news coming out all the time, but it's because it was like the momentum was basically not there. It was basically a bearish momentum, so it didn't matter. Like the market didn't care. It was whatever. There might have been like a one like daily pump or something, and then it would just be sold back down. Whereas we're in a very, very bullish momentum now that is, still parabolic, still going up like really fast, and still kind of like lots of room to run, I think. I don't think we're anywhere close to the top here. And I've said before how I believe that I don't think we're going to go into things like a 2-year bear market again or anything like that. maybe we might, given if the ecosystem gets way too crazy. Like if say the total crypto market cap goes to like $30 trillion or something, it's at 2 something trillion right now. Say it goes to like $30 trillion in like a few months. Then you can kind of look at that and be like, okay, well, a lot of people just made like a shit ton of money. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to sell. And if enough people end up selling, the momentum really quickly changes from bullish to bearish. And we may go into another long-term bear market because of that. But I don't think so. I mean, I think we're in we're still in the early adopter stage here, but I think that the fact that we have so many applications live today, so many things workable for people, and so many ways for people to kind of just like be part of this ecosystem outside of pure speculation on things. You can essentially just yield farm, which to be fair is driven a lot by speculation, but there are definitely ways you can just like not participate in the speculation yourself, but be a beneficiary of it through kind of like just depositing some stable coins, for example, into a yield farm. But yeah, really just good to see all of this bullish kind of momentum with ETH. I think enjoy it for enjoy these kind of early days, because eventually this is just going to be a thing where ETH will become so big that it'll become such a big asset that I don't think it'll be a boring asset, but it'll be like, okay, well, ETH is absolutely massive right now, and it'll be just expected that these institutions are buying ETH or stockpiling ETH and stuff like that. So I think just enjoying it while it's fresh is the way to go about it for sure. So Terrence here from Prysmatic Labs put out a nice screenshot today showing that there is 4 million ETH in deposit contract right now, the ETH2 deposit contract, which I think I spoke about the other day, which is over $10 billion. So we have like a synchronized kind of thing here, over 4 million ETH and over $10 billion in the deposit contract for ETH2, which is absolutely awesome. I mean, I've spoken about how I think once the merge goes through, this is going much higher because of the fact that stakers will now get fee revenue, whatever's not burnt, which means that we may see something like 20 million ETH staked, which is obviously much higher than 10 billion, right? If we take today's price and go all the way up to 20 million ETH, we just 5x it. So that would be over $50 billion of ETH securing the beacon chain. And on that note, we all expect the price to be higher than that, right? So let's say the price is like $10,000 by the time that comes around. And I know I'm being quite ambitious here, but let's say 20 million ETH staked at $10,000 would give us a $200 billion, I think, if I'm doing the math right, $200 billion kind of like securing the ETH chain here, which is huge, right? Absolutely crazy and massive, and they're getting kind of like paid out in new ETH issuance, but they're also kind of like a beneficiary of the burning coming with EIP 1559, and obviously they get whatever's not burnt as fee revenue as well. And I know the fees have been kind of lower lately, but I don't expect this to last. We're already seeing it spike back up to 100 Gwei when the market heats up a little bit. If we do go into a DeFi Summer 2.0 that everyone wants, the fees are definitely not going to remain at 40 Gwei. Let's just be honest. Like, doesn't matter, how much layer 2 scaling we have either. Layer 1 fees, because of the fact that layer 1 is inherently kind of like very limited actually, we are not going to get to that stage where fees are going to be like consistently low for a long time. That's what we have layer 2 for. But anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. I'll move on to the next thing I have here. Another tweet from Santiago. I mean, I'm pretty much like got him on every refuel now, I think. But anyway, he put out this tweet which says, Ethereum fees can be quite high at times, no denying that. Growing pains of a network adoption. Dial-up internet was expensive too, then broadband happened. L2's launching are the broadband moment of Ethereum. And then he has a nice chart here showing broadband versus dial-up adoption over time. Now, I've actually kind of spoken about this, maybe on the refuel, but definitely in my newsletter before, that because we're so early, there are these growing pains no matter what, right? There are the UX growing pains from not just the fees, but from the apps not, a lot of the apps not being totally usable. There is the growing pains of needing to learn new jargon and things like that. But obviously, the biggest kind of growing pain is the high fees. Now, if you remember back to, maybe some of you are too young to remember this, but I remember back to when dial-up was around, right, in the early 2000s. It was such a crappy experience. It was so bad. But you wanted the product so bad that you didn't care. Like, I wanted to get on the internet so badly that I dealt with the crappy kind of dial-up, right? You had to manually dial into it, right? You had to basically make sure that the if the phone was picked up, like if it rang and the phone was picked up, you would be disconnected from the internet. You had to deal with it being slow. It was inherently limited. Is this kind of, ringing any bells here about what else is experiencing this right now? Right, it's Ethereum. We care about, and a lot of people care about Ethereum so much and want to use it so badly that they are willing to pay these fees, right? I'm willing to pay $40 for a Uniswap trade because I want to do that trade. Just like I was willing to put up with the absolutely horrible experience I would have with dial-up just to get on the internet, just to experience this whole new world and this amazing kind of product. And then inevitably, because there was so much demand for the internet, people were like, oh, well, we have to scale this thing, right? Dial-up isn't going to be able to service the rest of the world. We have to scale this thing up to broadband. And then obviously we scaled it from there. We kept scaling it. Wi-Fi became huge. Like, we have 5G and stuff now, right? And that's the same with Ethereum, because we see the demand. We're like, okay, well, this thing actually has product market fit. There's extreme demand for it. How do we bring this to, as many users as possible and bring the cost down as much as possible? And Ethereum is doing that mainly via layer 2, but also other scaling means too, with sharding, with coming up with ways to increase the gas limit and things like that. And obviously there's other solutions like side chains and other blockchains like that can kind of go into that universe of scalability that basically allows this ecosystem to flourish. But it is always the users that come first before the infrastructure. No one builds infrastructure for 1 million users before they have 1 million users, because you risk building that infrastructure and then no one showing up. Like, I don't know if you've seen stories of the ghost cities in China where they built these massive sprawling cities that literally no one lives there because they figured, oh, we'll just build it all and then people will come there and people will fill it out and it'll be fine. That's not how it works. You need to have people there first and then build around them. That's why you pretty much see like every infrastructure project in real life, pretty much all of them come after the fact. Like, you'll have the houses that get built first because people want to live there, but then like the train stations and kind of like the shopping centers and things like that will come later, and then you get more and more of these services that come and you scale up your city from there. It's the same thing for Ethereum. It was the same thing for dial-up. It's the same thing for pretty much any of these any of these things that need mass scale. So yeah, I mean, this is a great kind of analogy here from Santiago, something that I obviously have been talking about for quite a while and strongly believe in. Give it, just some time, and Ethereum is going to scale and blow your socks off. Essentially, there's already layer 2s live, but we need that generalized solution, and I think we're getting there. And once we are there, it's going to be amazing. So yeah, keep your kind of eyes peeled for that for sure. So Metamask announced today that they have over 5 million monthly active users, which is obviously an all-time record here. And $2 billion in USD in accumulated transactions through their swap feature as well, which is huge. But I wanted to focus on this 5 million monthly active users stat, because even though it's huge, these aren't active users for just Ethereum. Because if you think about it, MetaMask is used for BSC and Polygon and these other kind of like blockchain, some of these other blockchains that people are using, right? Because all you have to do is install MetaMask, change your network, RPC, and you can go and use these other networks. But you have to bridge your assets across. But it's fairly simple, right? It's not too difficult. But I don't think this is a bad thing, because what I think is going to happen is that MetaMask becomes like it already is, like a massive kind of moat. And the MetaMask kind of team and MetaMask itself is very Ethereum aligned, right? And socially aligned, which is very important. But on top of that, the fact that all these new users now already have MetaMask installed means that when we have this generalized layer 2 ecosystem happening, they don't have to install anything new. They can just go use it. Even if they started in BSC, say they came from Binance, they installed MetaMask because they wanted to play on BSC because of the low fees and all that. But then they hear about this layer 2 thing on Ethereum and they're like, oh, how do I go there? It's like, well, just change your network in MetaMask. No need to install a new thing. No need to learn anything new because you've already learned it on BSC. Like, because BSC is a clone of Ethereum, it's essentially the same architecture, same address kind of usage, same kind of like, BSC scan is a clone of Etherscan, so it's even the same block explorer. So all of it's just the same. So that's why I actually, funnily enough, believe that BSC has been a pretty good onboarding vehicle for the Ethereum ecosystem, because we're going to get a lot of those users using Ethereum once they can use things that they actually want to use. And that's why I said Uniswap on layer 2 is going to be a game changer for the layer 2 space, because if you look at the most popular apps on each of these chains, it's always the swap apps. Like, look at PancakeSwap. It is the most popular app on BSC. It is a clone of Uniswap. So what happens when you have Uniswap with low fees on layer 2? On being powered by and secured by the decentralized Ethereum blockchain, there is no reason for these other things. And I do think that a lot of users are just going to come from those other chains like BSC over to Ethereum and be like, okay, well, if I can use Uniswap and Uniswap has all these assets and I can do all this stuff on here, on Ethereum with the kind of like same experience of low fees and even faster transactions, I think, because layer 2 is even faster than BSC, which has 3-second block times, then why wouldn't they just use that? They've already got all the tools for it, and I think they will. So yeah, 5 million monthly active is not just Ethereum now, right? It is BSC, it is Polygon, it is a bunch of the other ones. But in the future, I believe Ethereum will still account. I mean, I think Ethereum probably still accounts for the majority of this, but I think Ethereum can get a lot of these users back into its ecosystem, or at least users that were never in its ecosystem to begin with, but are now new users of Ethereum by default because they have Metamask installed. It's pretty cool when you think about it, right? So yeah, I mean, congrats to Metamask on this. Obviously, they've been around for quite a while, like since the early days. We all pretty much use it. I mean, I use it every day. Obviously, I have my cold storage with my kind of hardware wallets and things like that. But you know, MetaMask allows you to pass through it and stuff. So it's just like a really easy tool to use, and I'm sure we all enjoy it. Not the best in this competition. I mean, not to say it's perfect, and there's competition coming to MetaMask, which is good. But at the same time, it's going to be around for a while, and it's not. You know, I wouldn't say it's like terrible. I would say it's actually really, really great and been a big reason why Ethereum has been able to get so much adoption. But anyway, good to see these kind of like metrics coming out of MetaMask here. So Vasa showed this cross-asset swap that he put together today, which is done in a single transaction. Obviously, it costs a lot in gas fees, $120 here. But he's saying you can do much more complex transactions. And I think in the comments here, he said something about L2 is available too. He just hasn't released it yet. But essentially, what this cross-asset swap allows you to do is it allows you to go from ETH to DAI to this kind of like one NFT to another NFT to another NFT. It basically allows you to sell it in kind of batches. So you can see the input here is like ETH, DAI, 3 NFTs. And then you can sell these NFTs to what's called sell market. So you can convert all the assets to the corresponding ERC20 equivalents. And then you have like the ERC20 equivalents. And then you can kind of like buy NFTs from the buy markets, which is part of this app. So you can convert your ERC20 tokens to the desired NFTs that you want and do it all in one transaction. This is incredibly powerful, and I actually can't wait to see something like this on Immutable X, the NFT decentralized exchange, because I think this marries very well with it. And I think that it's really cool that everything that isn't spent, like all the dust, it gets sent back in ETH. And obviously with dust, you can't really do that on layer 1 because the definition of dust is essentially like coins you can't move because it would cost you more to move it in fees than it would than it would be worth. That's why on layer 2, like the concept of dust isn't really a thing. It's just like, here's your spare change, so to speak, and you can do whatever you want with that. So yeah, this is really, really cool. I'm excited to see how Vasa develops through this and kind of builds out stuff through this and gets it to layer 2 as well. And he's saying here it supports all the markets and exchanges that you want, and it's totally agnostic to how markets and exchanges work, which is really cool to see as well. So POAP.art announced today that there will always be a canvas for everyone to play with on sandbox.poap.art. So it's basically opened up to everyone, and you can basically go on there and essentially like kind of draw, I guess like things like pixel art essentially. I mean, you may have seen this kind of like already happened. Their community's been pretty active here. You can see the pixel art that got drawn here by various people in the ecosystem, and you know, I'm pretty sure like today they've just opened it up to everyone. And there's going to be incentivized canvases as well, or pixel farming as they like to call it too, which is really cool. But this is awesome. I mean, I think this is really cool from a community collaboration standpoint, where you can basically create these kind of art pieces where you can have it for like an event when an event's going on, and everyone can kind of like get on here and start drawing like pixel art for whatever they want essentially, and kind of like I guess making kind of like history and things like that on these sorts of things. So yeah, this is really, really cool to see. I think that you know, the POAP community is one of the best I've come across. I really love just jumping in the Discord sometimes and kind of like just lurking. I don't really say so much in there, but I kind of lurk, and they're just like doing some cool stuff, like doing some really awesome experimentations. And POAP's been around for a while, and I love my POAPs. I've got a bunch of them out in my wallet. But yeah, definitely an ecosystem to pay attention to if you aren't already. So Ryan Watkins put out an interesting tweet thread today where he said, "What's always excited me most about Ethereum is the sheer scale of its ambition. If Ethereum is successful, its economy may eventually grow so large that its GDP surpasses that of the leading nation states. This would change everything we know about economics and politics." I obviously agree with this to like the full extent. I wrote about this in the Daily Gwei newsletter today, but essentially what I focused on was Ethereum's advantage, which is its ambition. There is no other network in existence right now that has the ambitions that Ethereum does, not even Bitcoin. If Bitcoin's ambitions is to become like, I guess, digital gold or the most kind of like decentralized, self-sovereign, uncensorable money in existence, that's cool and that's a big use case, but Ethereum is doing that and everything else. So not only does Ethereum want to become everything that Bitcoin is and is becoming that, and I argue has already become that to an extent, it also wants to take this a step further and become its own circular financial system with things like DeFi. And where we're seeing that happen. And because of this ambition, it attracts some of the best and brightest minds in humanity. I mean, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that. Some of the smartest people in humanity are working within this ecosystem to across a variety of different areas. And I listed the areas in the newsletter today, but a few of them include just like the core protocol work, right? The foundations of Ethereum, the layer 2 work, the things that are going to get us, to the next kind of like billion users, the application developers that are innovating at a blistering pace to make use of all these tools that they have, the developer tools that the application devs use, and what was I think the last thing I talked about was the middleware and the infrastructure that surrounds all of this, like the Graph and Infura and Metamask and all that sort of stuff that works to give the end users a way to interact with all this sort of stuff. Now, because of all these people working all these things, they're doing it not just for the money. They're doing it for something greater than themselves. And that comes back to Ethereum's ambition, is that it is a very ideologically a kind of, I guess, like place network. It has decentralization and credible neutrality at the heart of what it is. It doesn't want to sacrifice on those properties. And because of that, the people that it attracts tend to kind of like fall into that, right? You don't attract people that don't believe the same things you believe. I mean, some of these things may look like religions sometimes. And I think that's a good analogy, is that, you know, a certain religion is not going to attract people that don't share the same beliefs, right? You may understand it. You may, be friendly with them. You may be like, okay, well, I don't hate you because you believe something I don't believe in. But it's the same for these kind of like crypto networks, and for any community really. Like communities, good communities stay together when they're cohesive, right? Like communities that just kind of like argue with each other all the time tend to break apart and fall apart, and kind of like things stagnate from there. I think we've seen this happen with various other networks. Whereas with Ethereum, you have like a very, I think, diverse but mostly cohesive community that are all basically focused on this ambitious goal of scaling up Ethereum to become this new financial system, to be able to decentralize even more than that, right? Decentralize websites, decentralize social media, decentralize basically everything we can. And you're seeing that play out in real time. So that's what attracts, I think, a lot of these kind of like intelligent people here. And the problems are hard to solve as well. Intelligent people want to work on hard problems. They don't want to do things that have already been solved. They want to be kind of like part of solving some of the hardest kind of problems in this space. And that's why you see, I guess, like, so much innovation coming out of the layer 2 space in particular, because I think some of the smartest people have congregated around layer 2 because they know it's such a hard problem and they know it hasn't been solved yet, and they want to be the ones to do it. So yeah, the great tweet from Ryan here. I wrote a little bit more about this in the newsletter, but I basically gave a recap of it then. So go check that out if you're interested. But yeah, thanks Ryan for putting this tweet out. So the Graph announced today that they have done a mainnet migration update where they've basically migrated 10 subgraphs from the Graph's hosted service to mainnet, so to their decentralized node network powered by the GRT token. These 10 apps include Audius, Dodo, Enzyme, Gnosis, LivePeer, MStable, Open, Pull Together, Reflexer, and Yuma. This is just the kind of like first step to getting more of these apps on board to decentralize and get away from the Graph's kind of like, I guess, centralized hosted service here. And that's the whole point. The Graph doesn't want to be a centralized hosted service. It wants to be a decentralized one that allows, I guess, like a decentralized query kind of ecosystem to flourish around this. And I think they've done a lot of great work getting to this stage, and the fact that they're already doing migrations to mainnet of these major projects is really awesome to see. And I mean, really awesome to see mstable on here. Of course, like as you guys know, I'm close to the project, but all these other ones are just like star projects within kind of like not just the DeFi community, but you know, things like Audius and LivePeer are very big, right? And they're not DeFi, right? So yeah, great to see this from the Graph. I'm looking forward to seeing what other projects kind of migrate next. So Mariano Conti here got a sneak peek of the Balancer V2 UI, and he shared some screenshots. And on that note, I actually also got a sneak peek of the UI, but I didn't share any screenshots. But I mean, it looks really awesome. You can see it here. I mean, this is just a sneak peek, but I basically played around with it myself and kind of was on a call with a few of the Balancer people to kind of get this sneak peek, and it was really awesome. I think my biggest gripe with Balancer has always been the UI and how complex it was to navigate and how unfriendly it was for users. But they've fixed that with this new UI. It's going to blow you away. I think more and more people are going to be using Balancer because of this, and I just can't wait to see all of the kind of like narrative change around that, because I know how much it must kind of like pain the team at Balancer to see that they've built all these really cool tech, but people just aren't maybe not using it because of the front end. And the front end is like super important, right? I mean, no one wants to kind of like use a. I mean, most people aren't going to use a complex product. If you think about just computers in general, I mean, the reason why Windows is so popular is because it gives you a nice, kind of like UI to interact with everything. Whereas with, you could interact and do everything you can on with the Windows UI by using the command line. But, who's going to use the command line, right? Like, people are visual creatures. No one wants to learn command line. They want to just do things on computers in the easiest way that they can do. And it's the same for Ethereum and DeFi, right? People just want to do, I guess, like their DeFi stuff in the easiest way possible with the least amount of friction. They don't want to have to like learn all these kind of like new complex technical things. So yeah, cool to see this from Balancer. It'll be released soon. I think they put out a tweet saying that it'll be probably released in a couple of weeks, this new kind of UI, which is part of the Balancer V2 kind of update here. So looking forward to that for sure. So I talked about Cellar Network's kind of like, I guess, what is it? Their DeFi public transportation system that they kind of released a couple of days ago or about a day ago, which is using rollups here. But essentially, I didn't talk about how the rollups are actually powered by Starkware. So I should have known that, really, at the end of the day. I really should have known that they were using Starkware because of the fact that Starkware seems to be everywhere right now. But anyway, they basically, I guess, like what they do with this kind of layer 2 finance system that they've built, or this DeFi public transportation system, is, as I explained the other day, is essentially a batching system where you can batch transactions from layer 1 and a bunch of users can batch together, and then a few hours might go by, and then your transactions will end up your money will end up on layer 2, and you'll be able to kind of like experience a cheap DeFi kind of like ecosystem without having to spend those high fees to get on there in the first place. Now, they did mention in one of these posts here that I read that right now I think it's a few hours to get onboarded, but as more and more capital comes into the system and as more and more people use it, those times can come down considerably, and even one day get to a point where it'll only be like one Ethereum block. So there's just going to be so many users depositing funds that it'll be worth it to do that batched kind of like transaction in one Ethereum block, so in 15 seconds. Which is, I mean, really awesome here. So yeah, anyway, I did speak about this in detail the last couple of days, so I won't go into it too much here. You can read this blog post that they've got here. This one's a good read, the Explain Like I'm 5. It'll give you just like a really great and simple overview of the system. I'll link it in the YouTube description for you to check out. And I think that's everything for today. So thank you again, everyone, for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, join the Discord channel, subscribe to the newsletter, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.